An explosive allegation is rocking the Sussex household and reverberating through Buckingham Palace. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are confronting their most serious credibility crisis to date. A woman identified only as Dale has stepped forward claiming she was the undisclosed surrogate for both of the couple's children, Archie and Lilibet. She says she possesses hospital records, payment receipts, and signed non-disclosure agreements that document a secret surrogacy arrangement. Evidence that, if verified, would upend the Sussexes' public narrative and raise constitutional questions about the children's places in the royal line of succession. The couple's representatives have issued legal threats against outlets repeating the allegations, but have not released a categorical denial, intensifying public and media scrutiny. It begins with a woman the press is calling DL. 2 letters, no face, no last name, just enough anonymity to give detectives of the digital age heart palpitations. DL says she isn't a fan, a hater, or a royal watcher looking to cash in. She calls herself the biological mother of both royal toddlers, quietly contracted to carry them to term, nursed in secrecy, and then erased from the public narrative the moment the stork touched down. Except DL claims she has the receipts. Hospital paperwork, billing statements, non-disclosure agreements inked under fluorescent lights, and a timeline that, if true, plugs every hole skeptics have been poking at since Meghan's first public bump. Her story goes something like this. Early in 2018, she was approached, through an agency, never by Meghan or Harry directly, to provide a discreet surrogacy service for a very private couple. Money was no object, but secrecy was everything. She would live off-grid, report to a single handler, and agree to vanish the moment a healthy baby slipped into waiting arms. In exchange, she'd receive what she calls life-changing security. She took the deal. 9 months later, she says, Archie was born in a small private hospital on the outskirts of London, nowhere near the Lindo wing's avalanche of flashbulbs. Pretty bold claim. Now fast forward to 2020. Same recruiter, same handler, same drill. Only this time the pandemic gifted the plan a built-in cloak. The world had bigger things to track than the waistline of a Duchess marooned in California. Lilibet was born, DL insists, on U.S. soil. 2 royal children, 2 secret deliveries, 0 stretch marks on Meghan. A claim that massive was never going to float quietly downriver. Instead, it smashed into years of archived clips. Shaky phone videos from 2019 showing Meghan's abdomen folding in odd angles as she bent to pick up a bouquet. Side-by-side photos of her belly shape morphing between public engagements. Pundits on TikTok circling screenshots like it was the Zapruder film. For years, those images lived in the realm of fringe conspiracy, the sort of thing tabloids tack beneath headlines about Elvis sightings. But once DL's voice hit the airwaves, the old footage looked less like a punchline and more like potential evidence. Was the moon bump myth ever really that absurd? Skeptics point to the couple's pattern of announcements. Remember the Morocco tour? 1 minute Meghan told well-wishers she was 6 months along. Medical math suggested she should have been barely 5. Due date bounced from April to early May, finally landing on sometime very soon before Archie's arrival was declared. Get this. Hours after he supposedly took his first breath. There was no hospital step and repeat, no Will out in a floral dress, no proud dad waving a newborn swaddled in royal cloth. Just a shaky, stable yard clip of Harry looking half bewildered, half ecstatic, thanking the horses for their patience. 2 days later, the new mom glided into St. George's Hall in a white trench dress. High heels, lipstick flawless, baby clutched in a way that made veteran moms tilt their heads and whisper, "Doesn't look natural, does it?" Critics didn't need a louder starter pistol. They examined the birth certificate and saw Meghan's given names, Rachel Meghan, scratched out and replaced by a title, Her Royal Highness. At first, the palace shrugged it off as protocol housekeeping. But a few legal eagles noted that if Meghan's signature never belonged on a line verifying maternity, swapping it for a title shielded her from charges of falsifying a public document. Handy if you're protecting a secret of dynastic proportions. Inconvenient if you're trying to look transparent. Now toss DL into that stew, and it boils over. Her angle is personal. She says the Sussexes promised to protect her identity forever, but once the babies were handed over, the firewall collapsed. Rumor had it a staff member leaked her existence to the British press, and panic set in. NDAs multiplied. Payment schedules shifted. Contact numbers died overnight. She felt cut off, disposable, a womb with legs thanked and locked away. DL insists she's not chasing fame. She wants acknowledgement, maybe even visitation rights. Whatever her motive, she chose a scorched earth method. Blow the whistle publicly and see who sues first. If you're Harry and Meghan, how do you tamp down that fire? The couple's standard toolkit: threaten litigation, demand retractions, rebut through friendly mouths on morning TV, was rolled out within hours. Yet something was different this time. There was no crisp denial, no outraged statement signed by a lawyer. Instead, the Sussex press machine emitted radio silence, broken only by anonymous sources close to the couple hinting at swift repercussions for any outlet that repeated DL's story. To ordinary onlookers, it looked less like confidence and more like paralysis. Meghan, the media-savvy actress who sparred with Piers Morgan and lectured the New York Times on ethics, uttered not a syllable. Harry, insiders whispered, was livid behind closed doors, cursing aides, punching walls, trembling over the one nightmare he was raised to fear: a legitimacy crisis. And let's be clear, legitimacy is the real beast lurking under the crib. If Archie and Lilibet entered the line of succession through a loophole, or worse, under false pretenses, the monarchy faces a constitutional migraine. British law never imagined a scenario where a surrogate's child could be whisked onto the throne without Parliament's blessing. Titles, inheritance, security, funding, all hinge on a biological connection that must be provable. Take away the genetic link or the act of royal birth, and the house of cards quivers. Royal watchers recall the abdication crisis of 1936. That was about marriage. This, potentially, is about blood. No spin doctor can hashtag that away. Palace courtiers, usually masters of the artful no comment, are said to be drawing contingency memos in back rooms. Do they wait for the Sussexes to bury the story, or do they quietly verify maternity through medical channels? A single strand of DNA could vaporize speculation or confirm it in a fireball. But demanding a test risks appearing to bully a couple already cast as victims of palace coldness. Yet if they don't act, they gamble with the crown's credibility, an institution still reeling from prorogation debates, Caribbean Republic talk, and the memory of Prince Andrew's public implosion. It's a chess game with live grenades for pieces. Public opinion, that fickle sovereign of modern royalty, has tilted sharply. Polls from both sides of the Atlantic put belief in the surrogacy tale above 70% among respondents who call themselves neutral or formerly sympathetic. Tweeters who once hashtag "We love you, Meghan" now circulate slow-motion clips of fabric bunching over what should have been a stretching stomach. Even in America, the land that took the Sussexes to its bosom when Britain turned frosty, primetime hosts are cracking jokes about inflatable bellies. When the late-night comedians smell blood, the brand is bleeding. Sponsors, streaming partners, and publishers sniff the wind too. Spotify already kicked Meghan's podcast to the curb, citing lack of authenticity. Netflix, though still publicly loyal, is rumored to be re-evaluating long-term Sussex projects. If the couple can't clear their names fast, the billion-dollar dream of becoming humanitarian media titans could shatter like a champagne flute dropped on palace marble. You can't hawk inspirational content while headlines scream, "Royal scam exposed." And then there's the marriage itself, an epic written in best-selling memoirs and Oprah confessions, now facing its darkest act. Friends of the couple whisper that Montecito has separate wings, Harry brooding amid boxing gear and therapy books, Meghan pacing with planners and crisis consultants. She blames him, sources say, for not containing DL before she went public. He resents the ever-tightening spiral of secrets he must memorize and defend. They reportedly take meals apart, speak through assistants, and retreat to their phones at night, scrolling, doom reading, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Divorce chat is premature, but if trust cracks over the question, who's the real mom, the fairy tale makeover fades to gray. Of course, not everyone buys DL's blockbuster. Supporters point to laws in both the UK and California that govern surrogacy. Paperwork would exist in court files, they argue, and leakers love juicy court files. Then again, powerful people have ways of sealing documents, and the Sussexes can't afford the best confidentiality architects money can hire. Others note Meghan's postpartum appearance. Didn't she look a bit puffy in that white dress? Could have been water weight, could have been clever padding. Photos alone won't settle it. Journalists are chasing harder evidence. Hospital administrators have been approached, nurses who might have been on duty interviewed under shadowy conditions. Thus far, nothing concrete has surfaced, but investigations gather momentum like snowballs. One nurse claims she saw a newborn matching Archie's birth date, moved under armed guard from a private wing to a waiting SUV. She didn't glimpse the mother. Security above VIP level, she remembers. Could have been any high-profile patient, yet the timeline dovetails with DL's. Meanwhile, attorneys circle. If the surrogacy was legitimate and above board, Meghan and Harry could defuse the uproar by confirming they followed proper legal channels. But surrogacy arrangements in the UK typically require approval by the family court before parental rights switch hands. No such paperwork has surfaced. In California, the process is smoother, but at minimum, there would be a certified agreement. Release it, skeptics say, and the fire dies. The couple hasn't. Why hold back if the truth is simple? One theory is optics. Harry's memoir Spare devoted entire passages to Meghan's pregnancies, using them as emotional anchors. Revealing a surrogate now would brand the bestseller as fiction. Also, Meghan has woven motherhood into her public persona. Barefoot in a chicken coop, reading children's books for charity, pitching mental health projects because every mom knows the pressure. Strip away the lived experience of carrying her children, and fans might feel duped, not because surrogacy is wrong, but because the narrative was curated for maximum sympathy. DL didn't plan it this way, she claims. She reached out privately weeks before going public, mailing a polite request for recognition, maybe an annual photo. No reply. Messages escalated. Her final note warned she would approach the press. Still silence. When her story exploded online, she says she received a legal threat within 48 hours, but by then screenshots had propagated faster than a royal wedding rerun. The genie refused to squeeze back into the lamp. The palace, though not directly implicated, finds itself cornered. King Charles, who spent decades restoring the monarchy's sheen after his own scandals, now confronts a dilemma. If he distances himself from his youngest son, he looks callous. If he shields Harry, he looks complicit. Courtiers are said to be weighing a stripped-back succession statement, reaffirming that Archie and Lilibet remain in the line only subject to all constitutional requirements being satisfied. That's a fancy way of saying, show us proof or step aside. Republican groups drool at the prospect. They argue that if the monarchy can't verify something as basic as a birth, why should taxpayers fund palaces and pageantry? Scotland's government, flirting with independence, could add dubious succession to its referendum pamphlets. In Australia and Canada, where Republican chatter spikes whenever the royals stumble, commentators are sharpening columns. One mismanaged scandal can tip undecided voters toward ditching the crown, all of which loops back to Meghan and Harry's original mission when they bolted for California: to modernize the monarchy, prove royals can be progressive, transparent, relatable. Surrogacy in itself would not have tarnished that vision. Plenty of modern couples rely on surrogates and speak openly about it. But secrecy, heavy-handed PR, and what looks like an illusion of pregnancy, that cuts the legs from under every TED Talk message they've preached about living your truth. Which road seems likeliest? Watch Meghan's silence. If she breaks it with documentary-ready candor, scenario 2 dawns. If weeks drag by with only sources close to making vague threats, scenario 3 grips tighter each news cycle. Meanwhile, DL isn't done. She hints at a memoir, perhaps an interview with a sympathetic podcast host. She could leak one hospital bracelet, one DNA snippet. In this age of citizen forensics, a single hair follicle mailed to an ancestry service could upend centuries-old heraldry. The palace can muzzle newspapers, but not Reddit sleuths. Once data points scatter across servers, the truth, whatever it is, becomes crowd property. And somewhere in California, two children toddle through a sunlit backyard, blissfully unaware their very existence may redefine what royal blood even means. They're the real innocents here, and that's the tragedy beneath the circus. The world's appetite for gossip rarely slows to ask how accusations ricochet through a young mind. Archie and Lilibet will one day Google themselves. What will they think? Did mom fake her bump? Did dad hide the paperwork? Did strangers decide whether they belong to a throne they never asked for? Heavy questions to shoulder before kindergarten. Harry knows that burden. He grew up chasing cameras down hallways, haunted by flashbulbs that stole his mother. His memoir rings with the pain of being the spare, the insurance policy for an heir. Imagine discovering your own children are being dissected in podcasts because someone questioned the simple fact of their birth. Small wonder insiders say he's snapping at staff, binging therapy sessions, sleepless at night. The boy who spent a lifetime resenting media intrusion now battles a monster partly of his own making. Because secrecy feeds suspicion, and suspicion feeds a 24-hour content machine. As for Meghan, ardent fans still see her as the outsider bullied by an archaic institution, a woman of color fighting centuries of coded snobbery. They argue the surrogacy rumor is just another brick thrown by racists. And yes, some corners of this saga reek of prejudice. But prejudice alone can't explain why former supporters have hopped the fence. Trust was chipped by half-truths about private flights, climate crusades, Spotify deals built on authenticity that fizzled, and now this. Credibility isn't a shopper loyalty card. You don't keep it if you punch the wrong holes too often. By the time you watch this video, new twists may have surfaced. A judge could slap a gag order on DL, or her evidence could leak like a sieve. The palace might issue a 3-line statement buried beneath coverage of some state banquet, hoping nobody notices. Whatever unfolds, remember the broader picture. Every institution, be it monarchy or Netflix empire, exists on a brittle surface called public belief. Shake that ground too hard, hide too much behind velvet curtains, and the facade cracks, sometimes beyond repair. Maybe that's why this story fascinates people who don't care a whit for royal gossip. Did Meghan wear a pillow? Did a surrogate sign away 2 heirs? Did Harry gamble his family's future on a secret that wouldn't stay buried? We may soon know, or we may never know, and the not knowing will stalk the Sussex saga like Banquo's ghost, rattling chains whenever Harry steps before a microphone to preach honesty and healing.